I pretended to have a heart attack and watched my world collapse in a single week. My surgeon daughter said she had a symposium in Montreal she couldn't miss. My lawyer's son told his wife to say he wasn't home. But my youngest, a paramedic working overnight shifts in a small town north of Thunder Bay, drove 9 hours through a snowstorm to bring me home. She gave me her bedroom, her savings, and when I overheard her telling her husband she would sell their truck to cover my rehabilitation, I knew the test was over. Because the next morning, when my attorney arrived with the documents revealing my $87 million fortune was untouched, the silence in that tiny kitchen was louder than any storm I have ever witnessed. I am grateful you are here listening today. Before we go further, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. I read far more of your messages than you might expect, and your words mean something to me. A quick note before we begin. Certain details in this story have been adjusted for storytelling and educational purposes. Any similarity to real individuals or locations is coincidental, but the core message is entirely genuine. The wind off Georgian Bay was bitter that January evening. I stood on the deck of my cottage near Collingwood, watching ice form along the shoreline in patterns that looked almost deliberate, as though the lake itself was trying to write something. At 66 years old, I had more silence in my life than I knew what to do with. My wife, Catherine, would have known exactly what the ice was trying to say. She had a gift for finding meaning in ordinary things. A cracked teacup was a story about resilience. A late-blooming garden was proof that patience always wins. She passed 6 years ago, pancreatic cancer, swift and merciless. And there are still mornings when I pour 2 cups of coffee before I remember. My name is Douglas Carruthers. I built Carruthers Timber and Building Supply from a single lumberyard in Barrie, Ontario, into a company operating across 7 provinces with a valuation of $87 million Canadian. We supplied materials for hospitals, schools, housing developments from Halifax to Victoria. I employed 1,400 people. I sat on the board of 3 charities. By every metric this country uses to measure a man, I had succeeded. But standing on that frozen deck, looking at a cottage built for gatherings that never happened, I understood something no balance sheet could capture. I was rich in everything except the one currency that actually matters. The first call came at 7:15. My eldest, Catherine, the one I had supported through medical school at the University of Toronto, tuition, living expenses, a condo near the hospital during her residency, all told close to $480,000. She became a thoracic surgeon at one of the top hospitals in the country. Brilliant, driven, the kind of doctor whose name appears in medical journals. Everything a father could hope for. Dad. Perfect timing. Her voice carried that particular energy she reserved for when she needed something. I have a situation I want to run by you. For one foolish moment I thought she might be calling to check on me. Maybe she had noticed I had been quieter than usual over the holidays. Maybe she remembered that January was the anniversary of her mother's diagnosis. There is a private surgical clinic opening in Yorkville. Richard and I have a chance to buy in as founding partners, but we need to move fast. I need $350,000 for my share. $350,000. Not how are you holding up this winter, Dad? Not I have been thinking about Mom lately. Just a number, wrapped in urgency. That is a serious commitment, Catherine. Why don't you come up to the cottage this weekend, and we can look at the details together? I heard her exhale the way people do when someone has just made their life slightly more complicated. This weekend is impossible. I have the Thoracic Surgery Symposium in Montreal. Richard and I are presenting on Friday, but I really need an answer by next week. Can you e-transfer the funds? I told her I would consider it. We said goodbye with the hollow politeness of people who have forgotten how to talk to each other about anything real. The second call came an hour later. My son, James, the one I had put through Osgoode Hall Law School, between tuition, his semester abroad at Oxford, his wedding to Vanessa at the Fairmont Chateau Laurier, and the down payment on their home in Westmount, I had invested close to $620,000 in his life. He practiced corporate law at a Bay Street firm, the kind of place where the coffee machines cost more than most people's cars. Hey, Dad. Listen, I will make this quick because Vanessa and I are heading out to dinner. His voice had the brisk efficiency of a man billing by the hour even when talking to his own father. We are looking at a chalet in Mont-Tremblant. Ski in, ski out. Phenomenal investment opportunity. I need $400,000 for the deposit. The market up there is moving fast. $400,000. Another child, another request, another reminder that somewhere along the journey of raising them, I had become a bank machine with a heartbeat. James, that is a significant amount. Why don't you and Vanessa drive up to Collingwood? We could have dinner, talk it through properly. There was a pause filled with the sound of him putting on his coat. Dad, honestly, things are insane at the firm right now. Year-end closings. You know how it is. Let me get back to you after the holidays, but the chalet will not wait. So if you could send the deposit this week, that would be ideal. I told him I would think about it. He said, great. Love you, Dad. Talk soon. And the line went dead. Love you, Dad, delivered with the same weight as a signature on a form letter. I sat in the dark for a long time after that. 2 children, 2 requests, 2 confirmations that I had raised human beings who had confused their father with a checking account. The phone rang at 9:20. I almost did not answer, but something told me to pick it up. Dad? Hi. I hope it is not too late to call. It was Emma, my youngest, the one who had stunned the family by choosing paramedic training at a community college in Sudbury, instead of the university paths her siblings had followed. Her education cost $28,000, a fraction of what I had spent on Catherine and James. She worked as a paramedic in a small town called Hearst, population 3,000, deep in northern Ontario where the winters are long and the distances between emergencies are longer. Her husband, Mark, taught grade 7 and 8 at the local school. They lived in a rented bungalow and drove a second-hand pickup truck with 200,000 kilometers on it. Emma, it is good to hear your voice. I just wanted to check in. Mark and I were talking tonight and I realized I had not called you since before Christmas. How are you, Dad? Are you eating properly? How is your blood pressure? Did you get your flu shot this year? She was not asking me for anything. She was asking about me, not about my money or my connections or what I could do for her career. She wanted to know if I had received a flu shot. She wanted to know if I was eating properly in this empty cottage by a frozen bay. We talked for 45 minutes. She told me about a call she had responded to on Christmas Eve, an elderly man who had fallen on the ice outside his farmhouse. She told me about Mark's students putting on a play about Canadian history. She told me about the northern lights they had seen from their back porch 3 nights ago, green and violet curtains rippling across the sky. When we hung up, something settled inside me. Not peace exactly, but clarity. A decision that had been circling in the back of my mind like a hawk over an open field suddenly dove and landed. I called Robert Macklin, my lawyer and closest friend for 30 years. Robert, I need your help with something. Something you are going to try to talk me out of. He listened. He tried to talk me out of it. He failed. Douglas, you are 66 years old, and you want to fake a cardiac event and pretend your entire fortune has been wiped out. Do you hear yourself? I hear myself perfectly, Robert. That is why I need someone I trust to make sure it is done right. We spent 4 hours on the phone that night. A cardiologist Robert trusted would provide medical documentation. A private security firm would monitor everything from a distance. The cover story would be straightforward. A heart attack that led to cognitive difficulties, followed by a predatory financial advisor draining my accounts while I was incapacitated. The company would appear to be in receivership. The cottage, the investments, the accounts, all seemingly gone. Robert made me swear that if anything felt genuinely unsafe, I would call immediately. I swore. We both knew I was lying. The preparation took 2 weeks. I stopped grooming properly. I let my beard grow patchy and unkempt. I bought clothes from a Salvation Army thrift store in Aurelia. A parka with a broken zipper, boots with worn soles, a toque that had seen better decades. I practiced looking diminished, which was not as difficult as it should have been, because the loneliness of the past 6 years had already done half the work. The hardest part was catching my reflection in the window of the cottage. The man looking back appeared 10 years older. His shoulders were rounded. His eyes carried a bewilderment that was not entirely performed, because standing there in donated clothes, preparing to test whether his children loved him or only loved what he could provide, Douglas Carruthers felt a genuine despair. What if all three failed? What if the test proved that $87 million had purchased nothing but obligations dressed up as relationships? I buried that thought in the snow of my resolve and made the first call. "Catherine, something has happened. I need to see you." I explained everything. The heart attack 4 weeks ago, the cognitive fog that followed, the financial advisor who had exploited my condition, the company in receivership, the cottage seized by the bank, the accounts frozen or emptied. Everything gone. Dad, that is. Catherine's voice carried the clinical tone she used with patients delivering difficult news to them rather than receiving it. That is a lot to process. When did this happen? A month ago. I did not want to burden you, but I have nowhere left to turn. I have lost the cottage. I have lost everything. I just need somewhere to stay for a little while. A spare room. A couch. Anything. Silence. Then the sound of her covering the phone and speaking to someone, Richard presumably. When she came back, her voice was careful, measured. The voice of someone managing a situation rather than responding to a crisis. "Dad, this weekend is genuinely impossible. The Symposium in Montreal. I told you about it. Richard and I are both presenting. We have been preparing for months. I am not asking about this weekend, Catherine. I am asking for a place to sleep. I have been staying at a shelter in Barrie for the past 4 days. A shelter." The word landed between us like a stone on ice. "Dad, look, let me send you some money for a hotel. There is a decent one near the highway. Stay there for a few days and we will sort something out after Montreal. I will have Richard call you next week." She e-transferred me $200 before we hung up. $200. I had spent $480,000 building her career, and when I told her I was sleeping in a shelter, she sent me enough for 2 nights at a roadside motel and a promise to deal with it later. I drove to Toronto the next morning. James and Vanessa lived in a renovated Victorian in Westmount, a neighborhood where the driveways held German SUVs, and the front gardens were maintained by professional crews, even in winter. I had provided the down payment for this house, $285,000, written as a check at their kitchen table while Vanessa opened a bottle of champagne. I rang the doorbell at 4:30. The sun was already fading. Through the frosted glass panel beside the door, I could see movement inside. Warm light, the blue flicker of a television. Vanessa opened the door. She was wearing a cashmere sweater and holding a glass of red wine. When she saw me, her expression moved through surprise into something that closely resembled alarm. "Douglas. Oh, James is not here right now." I could see his briefcase on the hallway bench, his shoes by the mat. The coat he wore every winter hung on the hook behind her. "Vanessa, I know he is home. I need to speak with him. Something serious has happened." She glanced behind her, then stepped onto the porch and pulled the door mostly shut, blocking my view of the interior, blocking me from entering the house I had helped purchase. James appeared a moment later, sliding past Vanessa with the cautious posture of someone approaching an unpredictable situation. "Dad, what is going on? You look different." I told him everything. The heart attack, the financial ruin, the shelter in Barrie. I told him I had already called Catherine and she could not help. I told him I needed somewhere to stay, temporarily, just until I could figure out my next step. James listened with his arms crossed. When I finished, he did not reach for me. He did not invite me in. He turned to Vanessa. They had one of those married couple conversations conducted entirely through eye contact, and I watched my son lose the argument. "Dad," he said slowly, "this is really difficult timing. We have clients coming for dinner on Saturday. Vanessa's book club meets here on Sunday. The guest room is set up for her parents who are visiting next week. I just do not see how this works right now. I am not asking for the guest room, James. I am asking for the couch. For one night. I am your father." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. The leather was Italian. The credit cards inside it gleamed. He extracted $500 bills and pressed them into my hand the way one tips a valet. "Dad, Take this. Get yourself a proper hotel room. Get some rest. I will call Catherine and we will figure out a plan together. But tonight is just not possible. You understand? I looked at my son. This man I had raised. This man I had spent more than $500,000 educating and establishing. He was buying my departure for $500 so his dinner party would not be disrupted. Take care of yourself, Dad, James said. We will sort this out. I promise. The door closed. I heard the deadbolt turn. Through the frosted glass, I watched him walk back to the warmth and the wine and the life I had financed. He did not look back. I took the bus north from Toronto, 12 hours to Hearst. The bus stopped in every small town along the highway, picking up and dropping off people whose lives did not include Bay Street offices or Yorkville clinics. A young woman across the aisle offered me half of her Tim Hortons sandwich when she noticed I had not eaten. A retired man from Kapuskasing told me about the time he lost his farm to a flood and his neighbors rebuilt his barn in a single weekend. These strangers, on a bus grinding through the Ontario darkness, showed me more human warmth in half a day than my 2 eldest children had offered in a week. Emma's bungalow sat on a quiet street where the snowbanks were taller than the fences. The truck with 200,000 kilometers sat in the driveway, plugged into the block heater, a thin cord running to the house like a lifeline. Christmas lights still lined the eaves. A pair of children's snow boots sat by the front step, belonging to a neighbor's kid Emma sometimes watched after school. I knocked. The porch light came on. Emma opened the door in flannel pajamas, her hair pulled back, exhaustion from a 12-hour shift still written on her face. And then she saw me. Dad. Her expression moved through confusion into alarm, into something fierce and protective, something that looked like a wall going up between her father and whatever had hurt him. Oh my God. Dad. What happened? Come inside. Come inside right now. You must be frozen. She did not ask why I was there. She did not glance at the clock. She did not calculate what my presence would cost her. She simply pulled me through the door and into the warmth of a home that smelled like wood smoke and the stew she had made for dinner. Mark appeared from the hallway, still in his school clothes, marking papers. He took one look at me, set down his red pen, and crossed the room. Mr. Carruthers, sit down. Whatever happened, you are safe here. I told them the story. Every piece of it. The heart attack, the financial collapse, the shelter, Catherine sending $200, and a promise to deal with it after her symposium. James handing me $500 and closing the door because his wife's book club was meeting on Sunday. Emma listened with tears falling freely down her cheeks. Mark's jaw tightened with each detail, but he said nothing until I had finished. You are staying here, Emma said. Her voice left no space for argument. You are staying with us for as long as you need. Emma, your apartment is small. I cannot take your space. You are taking our bedroom. Mark and I will sleep on the pullout in the living room. I cannot let you do that. Dad. She knelt in front of me and took my hands the way she might hold the hands of a patient in the back of an ambulance, steady and certain and full of a calm that said everything will be all right because I am here now. You are not letting me do anything. I am telling you. You are my father. This is your home now. Mark nodded. We will figure the rest out together, Mr. Carruthers. That is what family does. That night, I lay in their bed. The mattress was old, but the sheets were clean and smelled of lavender. On the nightstand was a framed photograph from our last family Thanksgiving when Catherine was still alive. All 5 of us, laughing about something I can no longer remember. Emma had kept that photograph beside her bed for 6 years. I could not sleep. Not because of the bed, but because of what I heard through the thin walls. Emma and Mark were in the kitchen. They thought I was asleep. They were speaking quietly, but sound carries in a small bungalow in winter when the furnace clicks off and the world outside is nothing but snow and silence. Mark, we need to talk about the finances. Emma's voice was steady but strained. I know. I have been running the numbers. Dad is going to need cardiac rehabilitation, follow-up appointments, medication. His cognitive issues mean he might need occupational therapy. OHIP will cover some of it, but the rehab programs have wait lists months long. If we go private, We are looking at thousands. There was a pause. What about the truck? Mark said quietly. I have thought about it. Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. It is worth maybe 12,000. The dealership in Timmins offered 10 last year when we thought about trading it in. That would cover the private rehab program and his medication for at least 6 months. Emma, that truck is how you get to work. The ambulance station is 40 minutes away. In winter, on those roads, I will carpool with Jesse. He drives right past our street on his way to the station. Or I will figure out the schedule with dispatch to match his shifts. We will make it work. Silence. Then Mark spoke again, and his voice was thick. What did they say to him? Catherine and James. What did they actually say? Catherine sent him $200 and told him to find a hotel. She has a symposium. James gave him $500 and shut the door. His wife did not want him in the house. They are saving for a ski chalet in Tremblant. I heard Mark set something down on the counter. Possibly his fist. A ski chalet. Their father is sleeping in a shelter, and they are shopping for a ski chalet. Emma's voice broke. They have everything, Mark. Catherine has her practice, her condo in Yorkville, her conferences. James has his firm, his house in Westmount, his German car. Dad gave them everything. He emptied himself for them. And when he needed them, when he actually needed them, they handed him pocket change and closed their doors. She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried something I will never forget. A question asked in the dark of a kitchen in a small northern town. A question that cut through everything like a blade through birch bark. What was any of it for, Mark? All that money, all those years of work, what did it build if this is what they became? Mark was quiet for a moment. Then he said simply, It built you, Emma. Whatever they forgot, you remembered. I will call the dealership in the morning, Emma said. First thing, Dad needs us. Nothing else matters right now. I lay in the darkness of their bedroom, tears running into the pillow, and I understood something with absolute certainty. My youngest daughter, the one I had given the lease to, the one I had quietly worried about because she chose a modest life in a small town, was preparing to sell the family truck in the middle of a northern Ontario winter to pay for rehabilitation her father did not actually need. I had spent over $1 million on Catherine and James. They had given me closed doors and cab fare. I had spent $28,000 on Emma. She was giving me everything she had. I made my decision before the sun came up. I called Robert while Emma was in the shower. It is done, I said. Send everything. At 9 o'clock, a black Suburban pulled onto Emma's quiet street. The neighbors watched from behind curtains. Nobody drove a vehicle like that in Hearst unless someone important had died or someone important had arrived. Robert stepped out, followed by his associate and a notary. He carried a leather briefcase. He looked conspicuously overdressed for a town where the dress code peaked at clean Carhartt. Emma answered the door in her paramedic uniform, ready for her shift. She looked at Robert, at the Suburban, at the strangers in suits standing in her entryway, and then at me. Dad, what is going on? Call the station and tell them you need the day off. Then ask Mark to come sit down. We need to talk. 20 minutes later, Emma and Mark sat on their pull-out couch, still folded out from the night before, blankets rumpled. I stood in front of them. Robert waited by the door with his briefcase. Everything I told you was a lie, I said. Emma's face went white. What do you mean? I never had a heart attack. I never lost my money. Carruthers timber is worth $87 million, and I still own every share. The cottage is mine. The accounts are full. I fabricated the entire thing. She stared at me. Mark's hand found hers. I needed to know, I said. I needed to know who my children really are when the money disappears. So I went to each of you with the same story. Emma's voice was barely audible. You tested us. I tested all 3 of you. Catherine heard that her father was homeless and sent me $200. She had a symposium to attend. James heard the same story and gave me $500 on his front porch. His wife did not want me inside. They are saving for a chalet in Montreal. Mark's grip on Emma's hand tightened. But you, I said, and my voice broke completely. You drove 9 hours through the night to check on me at Christmas. You gave me your bed without hesitation. You were going to sell your truck in the middle of January in Northern Ontario to pay for rehabilitation I never needed. You asked the only question that mattered. What was any of it for if this is what they became? Emma was crying now, silent tears running in steady lines down her cheeks. Dad, why? Why would you do this? Because I spent 6 years alone in that cottage wondering if any of my children would love me if I had nothing left to give. And now I know. Robert stepped forward and opened the briefcase. These documents represent a complete restructuring of Mr. Carruthers' estate, Robert said, his voice professional. The majority of his assets, a total of $57 million, along with full controlling ownership of Carruthers Timber and Building Supply, will be held in trust for Emma and Mark Carruthers and their future family. Emma shook her head. Dad, no. That is insane. I do not want their money. I do not need millions of dollars. I just wanted you to be okay. I know, I said. That is exactly why you are receiving it, Robert continued. Catherine and James will each receive $8 million. However, these inheritances are conditional. Each must complete 200 hours of volunteer work with elderly and homeless populations through recognized Canadian charities. Each must participate in 18 months of family counseling. And each must write a letter, not to their father, but to Emma, acknowledging what they did and what she did differently. There is one more item. Robert produced a set of keys. Your father has purchased a property here in Hearst, a 4-bedroom home on Murdoch Street, renovated, with a proper garage, a wood-burning fireplace, and a yard. The deed is in your names. Emma stared at the keys like they were something fragile that might shatter if she breathed on them. A house, she whispered. I crossed the room and knelt in front of my daughter. You earned this, not through credentials or status or climbing any ladder this country builds. You earned it by being the person who drives through a snowstorm at 2 a.m. because her father sounds tired on the phone. By being the paramedic who holds a stranger's hand in the back of an ambulance and tells them it will be all right. By being the woman who would sell her only truck in the dead of winter so her father could see a doctor he did not actually need. That is worth more than every dollar I have ever made. Emma threw her arms around me and held on the way she used to when she was small, when I would carry her on my shoulders through the sugar bush behind our house in Barrie, and the whole world was maple syrup and wood smoke, and the absolute certainty that her father would never let her fall. Mark shook my hand. His eyes were red. He tried to speak. He could not. He tried again. Thank you, Mr. Carruthers. He stopped. Thank you, Dad. It was the first time he had called me that. That was 3 years ago. I sit now at Emma's table in the house on Murdoch Street. The kitchen smells of tourtière and roasting root vegetables. Snow falls softly past the windows. Mark is helping their daughter, Catherine, named for her grandmother, stack wooden blocks on the living room floor. She is 2.5 and has her mother's stubborn kindness and her grandfather's loud laugh. Catherine is here. She arrived yesterday, driving up from Toronto in the car she used to say was too nice for northern highways. The therapy changed her. The volunteer work at a seniors center in Parkdale broke something open inside her that surgery never could. She is quieter now. She listens more. Last month, she started a free cardiac screening clinic for elderly patients who cannot afford private care. She told me once that she had spent her whole career fixing hearts without understanding what makes them work. James is here too, helping Mark shovel the driveway. He has changed in ways I did not think possible. The community service placed him at a legal aid clinic serving homeless veterans in Hamilton. He spent weekends helping men who had lost everything navigate a system designed to confuse them. He told me it was the first time his law degree felt like it meant something. Vanessa did not survive the transformation. She left when James told her he wanted to donate their Mont Tremblant chalet fund to a housing cooperative. He did not fight the divorce. He said he understood. She had married a certain kind of man, and he had become someone else. Before we eat, James stands. He does this every year now. 3 years ago, he begins, his voice rough. My father stood on my porch in Toronto. He was wearing a coat from a thrift store. His boots were falling apart. He told me he had lost everything and needed a place to sleep. One night, that is all he asked for. And I gave him $500 and closed the door because my wife did not want the inconvenience. Because I had dinner guests coming. Because I had become the kind of man who could look at his own father in crisis and calculate the disruption to his schedule. The room is quiet except for Catherine babbling at her blocks. I have spent 3 years trying to understand how I became that person. James continues. How I went from the kid who used to help Dad stack lumber in the yard to a man who would not let his father sleep on his couch. And I know now that it happened slowly. It happened one promotion at a time, one expensive dinner at a time, one moment of choosing comfort over character at a time, until I woke up one day and realized I had everything the world says matters and nothing that actually does. He turns to Emma, but Emma never lost it. When Dad showed up at her door with nothing, she did not think about what it would cost her. She did not check her calendar. She gave him her bed, her savings, her truck. And when Mark asked what it all meant, Emma asked the question the rest of us should have been asking our whole lives. What was any of it for, if this is what we became? He raises his glass. To Emma, to Dad, to the family we almost lost and the second chance we did not deserve. We drink. Catherine demands apple juice. The moment dissolves into the beautiful chaos of a real family being a real family. Later, after the dishes are washed, and Catherine is asleep, and Mark is playing guitar softly in the living room, while Catherine and James argue good-naturedly about hockey, Emma and I sit on the back porch. The northern lights are out, green and violet ribbons shifting across the sky like the world is showing off. Do you regret it? Emma asks. The test? I think about it carefully, watching the lights move. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that I raised 2 children who needed a crisis to remember who they were supposed to be. But I do not regret learning the truth. And I do not regret what came after. Emma leans her head against my shoulder. The aurora shifts and pulses above us. Somewhere in the house, Mark starts playing a song Catherine likes, and Catherine laughs at something James says, and for a moment the whole world is contained in this small house on a quiet street in a small town, where the winters are long and the hearts are warm. Dad, Emma says, I never cared about the money. You know that. I would have sold the truck. I would have picked up extra shifts. I would have done whatever it took. I know. That is why you have it. Because you would have given everything. Because you understood that wealth is not what you accumulate. It is what you are willing to sacrifice when someone you love has nothing left. She squeezes my hand. The lights dance. Inside, my family, my whole imperfect, beautiful, rebuilt family, fills the house with the sounds of people who have learned, some of them the hard way, what it means to show up. My name is Douglas Carruthers. I built a company worth $87 million. I also nearly lost 3 children because I spent so many years building an empire that I forgot to build a family. But standing in my youngest daughter's doorway, in a borrowed coat, pretending to have nothing, I finally learned the lesson I should have understood from the beginning. Real wealth is not measured in portfolios or properties, or the balance of your accounts. It is measured in the daughter who drives through a snowstorm because her father sounded tired. It is measured in the son-in-law who says, whatever happened, we will figure it out together. It is measured in the children who, when they finally see who they have become, choose to become someone better. If this story has touched you, I ask 3 things. Leave a comment sharing your own story of family, forgiveness, or the moment you understood what truly matters. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And subscribe to this channel for more stories about redemption, grace, and the deep, quiet reckoning of fathers who refuse to give up on the people they love. Because sometimes the most important thing a father can do is take away everything that glitters so his children can finally see what is gold. A gentle reminder. This story contains elements of fiction crafted for storytelling and educational purposes. While grounded in universal truths about family, sacrifice, and love, certain details have been dramatized. If this story resonates with you, carry its message forward. If it does not, you are free to find content that better serves your journey. But whatever you do, do not wait until the lights go out to find out who would have stayed in the dark with you. May you have the courage to choose love over convenience. May you have the wisdom to measure wealth by what you give, not what you keep. And may you never need a test to know who your family truly is.